Ready to rock and roll? Is that action? All right. Okay.
That's right.
All right.
Absolutely. Go. Go.
Hello, everybody. It's Jason Will with
Go.
This is a real estate podcast, but we talk about leadership, personal growth, and becoming the best version of yourself. Leadership, check 1, 2, check 1, 2. Growth, best version of yourself.
Go.
So this is a real estate podcast. Colin Krieger,
Jason Will.
welcome to the Agent 251 podcast.
Thank you. I love the studio here. Things are
This is
looking
impressive studio, is it not?
It's pretty nice.
It's amazing what you have to do to find a quiet space. We're podcasting from the basement of my office in Fairhope, Alabama, because we have an open concept, and this is what you got to do.
And the hurricane's coming, so that's part of the
It's kind of a double thing,
Yeah.
Safety and sound.
So I'm going to go over the 10 ways to hurricane-proof your house, including the only basement in Fairhope, Alabama.
You're right, this is one of the only basements in Fairhope, Alabama, and it's a big one, too. All right, let's tell the audience where you're from. Let's start there. Where are you from, where you sell, and just a little bit about you as a real estate agent. And then I want to go into just kind of your backstory about how you got into real estate.
Okay. My name is Colin Krieger. I'm with RE/MAX Partners in Starkville and Columbus, Mississippi. Starkville is Mississippi State Bulldogs.
Go Dogs.
Much hated in most of Alabama.
Yeah, they just beat Auburn.
Yeah. Lucky I made it here. And then Columbus, which is Columbus Air Force Base, which is the busiest Air Force training base in the country.
Oh, wow. I did not know that.
So a lot going on there.
Yeah, and you are one of the top, if not the top, or you're competing for the top spot in your office consistently.
Yes, and I'm ahead on deals day to day on the money part of it. So,
how long have you been in real estate?
4 years, a couple weeks ago was when I started. So,
and are you from the New Orleans area?
Yes, sir. I'm born and raised in New Orleans. Grew up working in the restaurant business. Owned my own restaurant when I was 21. I'd worked for Papa John's in college after we sold my restaurant and made money, which nobody does, but we just decided to get out of it. Wasn't enough money for me. Went back to Papa John's and came to work for Papa John's on the Gulf Coast. And I was when Hurricane Katrina hit, I was running the store at Keesler Air Force Base. And we'd bought a house in JWRE. So if anybody has read the news, wasn't a good time to have a house in JWRE, Mississippi, and an old house in New Orleans. Not good timing. But ironically, fortuitously, I'd been offered a job in North Mississippi, working for the ownership group up there, doing some marketing the Saturday before the Hurricane Katrina. And I'd said, man, there's no way I'm going up to cow pasture, Mississippi. Then about 10 days later, as my house started floating away, I was like, I really like cows.
Yeah.
I want to learn about these cows. And in the meantime, I had flipped houses casually. Of course, it was pretty easy. I had started with the old books, not Kiyosaki, but a lot of the real old books when you knock on doors and be like, hey, do you have an assumable loan? Or, would you hold the first note and hold the second note? So I know a lot of those tricks, but a lot of those tricks don't fly anymore with Fannie Mae and HUD. So we slowed that down. We did a couple hold and flip, like we lived in the house, kept it for 2 years and flipped. And we stayed in Columbus for a couple years, then moved up north to Oxford, Ole Miss. Papa John's needed me there, so we went there and built that store to one of the biggest in the country and flipped a couple houses up there. And then me and another friend from Columbus came back and bought the newspaper there. There's a huge weekly newspaper, the biggest weekly newspaper. It's like a tabloid newspaper. Like,
oh, wow.
People getting shot, car wrecks, that sort of stuff. He and I ran that. We bought another 2 little paper in Alabama. He's bought another one since I got out of it. And then eventually it was just too much. I ended up running it. We didn't have anybody else to do it. It toughened me up, man. I was, being in a restaurant and everything else, I was a sales guy at heart, and I would stay awake at night if somebody didn't like me. And if you own a newspaper with pictures of bloody heads and car wrecks on it every day, some people are not going to like you. So
that's fascinating.
Every single week. And that was the first thing they told me they got in real estate. Some people aren't going to like you. I'm like, are they going to threaten to kill you? Like, are they literally going to stab you in the back? And he's like, well, no. I'm like, I'm good, buddy.
To keep you from running a story.
Yeah.
That's what you're saying.
But, I had to run the paper. We lost 2 or 3 editors right away. So I took an average of probably 1,000 photographs a week while I was there for 2.5 years. And I was one of the main writers. So I was probably writing 2,000 or 3,000 words a week under pressure. So.
And you found time to get your real estate, go through your real estate course? And
I got away from my partner, had a pretty clean break, and so I went to the first place I wanted to go was RE/MAX, or the Balloon, big name, and I figured in our town we don't have too many small brokerages, and I knew Mike and Chris who owned it. That wasn't my first instinct. I told my wife, I'm like, I don't know what to do. Like, we got a little money out of this, but I can go back to Papa John's anytime. I had a cake job. It just involved a lot of traveling, marketing wise, and So she's like, why don't you go into real estate? I mean, and when I say it wasn't on my top 10 list of things I should do for a living, with a restaurant newspaper background, but she's like, you always wanted to do it. You've read all the stuff. I'd read all the prep books for the test. So I went in there, and I think August 18th, I think I took the test the end of August, and then it took 3 or 4 weeks for my license to come back, which, as you know, as a manly man with 3 kids at home and no job, hurts. But I sat there and watched every video. I mean, an honest 5-6 hours a day of videos, another 2 hours of books every day for 30-something days. So I'd watched all these Kevin Ward videos. He's a guy in California, KW trainer. Every single thing he did when he was getting off the ground, I was there when Joshua Smith was getting off the ground and communicating with him. And in that meantime, I know I'm jumping into all kind of stuff, but that's how I got into a lot of the real estate training stuff, which is how I met you, which is why I just want to keep learning and keep growing.
Well, let's talk about it. Did you have you said you had a little bit of money in the bank, but how long did you have before maybe the financial stress was really going to get bad? So how long did you have to make something happen in real estate before you're going to hit the panic button?
I have anxious agent syndrome right now, the same probably pressure that a lot of agents feel. But we started October 1st. On January 6th, I had my first close. But on January 1st, I had 33 signs in the ground. I had 30 listings in my first 90 days. Now, RE/MAX, great splits, but your own signs, your own lockboxes. Mm-hmm. So it's pretty hard want to be one of the top listing agents in the MLS around Christmas time, and people are patting you on the back, and your name's getting out there, and you got signs everywhere. But you can do the math at $100 a listing. I'm going backwards in sales. They're like, this is great. I'm like, this is not. Everybody's like, you're doing wonderful. I'm like, no,
listings
not
don't mean
cool.
closings.
Yeah, and probably June of that year, I learned I started doing a little more about the practical follow-up of real estate, saving searches, and really automating some of the lesser stuff, really deep learning things. And so I did 35 deals my first year, 35 sides. But that's still, I was, both my previous jobs, probably lifestyle-wise, needed to make $80,000, $100,000 a year. So my standard, even though it keeps raising, my standard needs to be that. So in a market where we have a $170,000 average house between our 2 cities, it takes a lot to get that. So.
That's right. Where, if you reflect on it now, where those 35 deals came from? Do you remember?
Oh, yeah, no. Do I remember? I have it documented. Yeah, consistency is where it starts. If you're sitting there for 30 days, now I'm shocked at how many agents who do 5 or 6 deals a year think they don't have time to do tons of stuff, much less anything. But as I was sitting there training, I also spent 2 hours a day at the office, had access to the MLS, and I went back 7 years and looked up every expired. I went back and manually looked up because the Red X wasn't synced with our system then or anything. Looked back at people who'd closed on houses 5-7 years before, who'd bought it right after the crash, who had bought foreclosures, and just made lists and started looking up the people. And old school phone book, matching them up on Facebook and those sort of things at the same time, so that when day one started, I probably had 200 or 300 letters ready to go. And I hand delivered every single one of them that first week.
Is it a long letter or is it a short message?
It was 5 sentences. My name is Colin Krieger. I got a family. It wasn't. I have a family feed, but it's Colin Krieger. I'm a real estate agent at RE/MAX Partners in Columbus. As I noticed, your house came off the market on this date. I'm sure plenty of people have contacted you. I'd love to have 2 minutes of your time. Please give me a ring. And putting them on people's doors and knocking on the doors, I think, helped for a lot. That was a decent amount of them. And of course, we're talking. Was it 2014? The market there was still 7-8 months on the market.
Right.
So we had 1,100 listings, residential listings. You pull up the MLS, 1,100 there. You open it today, it's 550. So it's not as hot as a lot of the other markets that I think I come to. And that's something I talk about constantly because during that 30, 40 days, and since then, I've reached out to agents all over the country. And believe me, every agent in their market thinks their market's tougher, their market's different. You don't understand. We do this. When the numbers of listings I've done and what my goal was when I started, which was to do in our market $7 million. No matter how I got there, I wanted to get there, but I wanted $7 million of repeatable residential listings, no foreclosures, investors, no condos, no friend who works at a steel mill or whatever giving you leads. Like I figured if I could earn that, then I could be like, okay, if I know I'm going to do that this year. Oh, wait, I can do some relocations. Oh, wait, I can do some other discounted stuff just to get it. Because I wanted touches. I knew if I could just build on people, getting people, whether $40,000 houses, $200,000, $300,000, whatever I could get. So in my first 2 years, I only crossed $300,000 twice. That being said, we don't have a ton of that. We have 2 agents that average over 300, which is what I'm sort of building to now.
It's interesting. I was fortunate enough to sit down with Alexander Shinara a few weeks ago, and he was talking about his big Marlin judgments or verdicts is what I was looking for. He said all those came from the minnows. So all of his Marlins came from minnows. It would be like somebody he was representing on a traffic violation or something. These little bitty things. But I see that a lot. I see realtors that one of the most successful agents that's on my real estate team right now will go anywhere I ask him to go and run down any lead. And so many agents just they just throw things to the wayside. They're like, oh, I don't want to call that. It's too low. So I'm hearing a couple things because what I'm constantly trying to do is understand the mindset and really the gap that exists between what an agent wants and what they're doing to get it. And there seems to be this very large gap. So the agents who are crushing it, you are at the top of your office. There's people at the bottom. What's the difference? Like, is it a mindset? So I'm fascinated with this.
I think everything goes back to is it Napoleon Hill, you are what you think about. And if you don't think something's possible, which is why I have to drive in my mind 3 or 4 hours to see agents like you or Ricky or people in Atlanta or Vaynerchuk or any of these guys speak, is because your average income's your 5 best friends, the people you hang out with.
Right.
I try to hang out with better people. I like all kind of folks. They're fine. But in what I started seeing, I'm like, cool, I know I can get to 60 deals. I consistently saw people. It's different than every market, but I would see people in our market who got to 5 or 6 million, 30-something deals, do it for 2 years in a row, and without fail, with the exception of 1 or 2 of the top king agents forever, they drop back down to 2.5 and 15, 16 deals. And I don't know if it's because they got comfortable. Most of them, I'm sure, didn't service their back-end people after, most, you don't see their clients after closing. That's always been a consistent problem. But I just don't think they think it's possible. Whereas, I'm going to head for 65, 70 deals this year. I have the time to do 130, 140 with an assistant. And if you started, you get it. Once you pass 70 deals, my quest in my second half of my career has been, who are these guys doing more than 70 deals? I haven't found any that are really alone. There's a lot of BS when you get in the numbers.
Right.
I don't even know my gross commission. I know what I make on every house. So if you ask me on a house, I know what I make, and then I know what I make, what gets to my house, which is minus the 20% for taxes, 10% for my marketing budget. I don't know my GCI. People ask me that, but then when I tell them, I said, I do 60 residential deals this year, and I can do more. There's plenty more out there. Like somebody else lists a house, I still get my feelings hurt or I get mad, Not that I didn't get to, not if I go to a listing appointment, but if
it motivates you.
Yeah, but I'm like, man, I should have gotten there. How did I not get there? Who are these people? It's still there, but if you don't think it's possible, if you don't start hanging out with people where that's a standard, I've had 2 periods this year. I'm in one right now. It's been 3 weeks since I pended something, which a lot of agents are, be happy that they have 4 or 5 closings at a time. I'm stressed out. It hurts your ego. It messed me up. Now I know what to do. I go back through my lead sheets and call people, and start hammering my friends and asking for them. And, I got 16, 17, 18, 19 listings right now. And that also stresses me out, they're there. That's people oh, that's great to have all that. I'm like, they haven't sold. You don't get an attaboy if you don't sell a house.
Right.
There's no winning there and there's no money. And again, I've got 3 kids and I'm always like, man, it could end any second. It could be over any second. And, it's that mentality is good in the respect that it's, it pushes you to do more, but it's not, a lot of people don't want to listen to it. They don't want to be like, what are you upset about? You got this, and this. I'm like it stops. If you stop prospecting, it will stop. If I just stopped all the marketing in the world, it's going to work for you if you don't.
That's right. I think a lot of folks that are in our industry don't understand. They're not prepared for how hard it is.
Yeah.
We had a conversation today at a training in our office in Orange Beach, and I had one agent who raised his hand and said that he had been time blocking. He had been on the phone for 3 hours today, and it produced 1 appointment. And I think that was difficult for a lot of the agents in the room to hear, who were trying to motivate to get on the phone and to consistently prospect. They're like, wow, if I've got to dial for 3 straight hours to get 1 appointment. Now, of course, other days he may get 0, and then other days he may get 5, or he may just crush it, he may get 10. But on this particular day, he got 1, and my point to the audience was really twofold. Number one, this shows you the kind of grit you got to have in this industry, because number one in your office, you're still got anxiety because if it's 100, you kill what you eat.
Yeah, well, I was number one in the MLS till June. So and the number one, the ranking stuff. I'm more deeper in the numbers, and I can tell you than any other person in MLS. Not for ego. I mean, sometimes I'll call other agents. I'm like, do you know you're the number one buyer's agent in North Carolina from another office? And they're like, what? I'm like, you are the number one buyer agent. Because a lot of agents in our office don't even know how to get. A lot of agents overall don't know really how to look at the MLS,
right?
Deep and all the info it provides and. It's an advantage to have all that there. But I look at that and say, hey, if my main competitor, we got some. These are basement sounds. I don't know if y'all are picking this up, but something just happened above us.
Bathroom.
Yeah,
I think it was just a number one. So
good. Well, I'm number 2 right now, so thank God. But a lot of them don't know those numbers if you don't know it. And so if I look and I say, I consider 2 agents that are kind of like me who do a lot of deals, and we'll call everybody back as opposed to, there's one agent that did 16 deals, averaging $320,000 last year. That sounds awesome. Now, when times get tough, I don't want to be that agent. I still want to have that 40 to 60 deals if I can going directly through me because I have 40 to 60 people who like me, 40 to 60 people who come to my parties, 40 to 60 people who are repeating my name because that's why you need to call these broke people back. My single best referral source, and he'll listen to this because he's a fan, so I'll say his name, Warren. But he was looking for houses. His parents looked for houses, and he knows he's a pain in the ass. But anyway, we went out looking at houses. He ended up buying a for sale by owner, but he called me. I called the for sale by owner, I hate realtors. I'm like, well, I don't like realtors either. But he wouldn't budge. It was a decent price. I said, listen, you can go to the state website. Most of the forms are on there. I can't help you any more than that, but I still love you. Please come to my parties. I appreciate you at least doing it. 2 referrals 2 weeks later, probably 9 or 10 deals. This guy who I stepped aside and actually cared. Vaynerchuk says, right. Don't act like you care, actually care. Do it. And if you do that, you'll win. Now, sometimes it doesn't feel like, man, he bought it for sale by owner when I had only hit 11 deals that year. I was like, man, this was June. I'm like, man, this is sucking. But in the long game, it win. And when you go back to the consistency and day by day, and I'll go in that today or when we talk Thursday. For expired listings, what I did as soon as I was on, as soon as they were expired, not 10 minutes later, everybody calls. In the big markets, I don't know how big Orange Beach is. We have 150,000 households in our real market. There's probably 300 in our MLS, but there's some very rural counties. So an average day then, you'd have, 20 expireds a week or so. Now it's probably lower than that. And of those, some of those were land and other stuff. Every single one, whether 30 minutes away, 20 minutes away, 10 minutes away, around the corner from my house, some of them I would predict. They had a list I know this one's coming up. It's good next 6 months. So when they come up, every single one, not sort of them, every single one up until January of this year, which I've actually started teaching some other people, but I've gotten busy enough where I don't go after every single one. I go after ones I want. And by the way, this is this is gold. Go to the FedEx store, get some overnight envelopes. Don't overnight it. Put your letter in an overnight envelope. And if you bring that to somebody's house at 7:30 in the morning, if they're over 40 years old, you got the listing. And if you don't have the listing, you have their respect. But when you put an overnight envelope with a little note on it, and it's just the vision of the overnight envelope, they're going to grab it. You know what I mean? And you've beat everybody there. What else are you doing? What else? You're not really working. I know what work is. Guys in your MLS that are doing 70, 100 deals maybe with an assistant or a couple buyer's agents. I'm here playing with you before a hurricane. I'm anxious because I don't have enough deals, so I really want to go back. But there's so much time.
It's brutal honesty.
There's so much. You don't have the 20 minutes to do that. You're broke. And here's a good one, and one of my best from an expired listing. By the way, she bought 2 houses down here in Pensacola. So sweet little Miss Adair, I got her a house. She's recently widowed. I look her up on tax rolls before I go over there. See she's got 2 houses, but the one expired. So I'm there at 7:15 on a Wednesday morning. Not only do I have with this one, I really wanted this house. This was in January, really the beginning of my first year when I was selling a house. So I go to her house. I got my thing in there. There's not a lot of stuff in there. It's not a lot of fluff. You could do a CMA. That'd be great. I'm sure they'd like it or whatever. But I gave her that overnight envelope. She's like, what is this? Well, I'm like, I didn't know if you'd be here. So I made 2, one for the house you live at. She's like, well, how do you know where I live? I'm like, well, I looked on the tax records. I know you own 2 houses. So I figured out, I'd bring it to this one. And if it was vacant, which it is, I was going to bring it to your other house, but I can't knock on your door. And she's like, oh, well, let me give you a tour of the house. I'm like, well, that's great. And she told me, this. And but her husband passed. And I'm like, well, you shouldn't be making a decision today anyway. She's like, well, I had it listed. She's like, why don't you bring the paperwork back later? I'm like, well, the paperwork's in there. She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, listing agreement's in there. I'm like, why would I drive out here without it? And that, first of all, the listing, how long does it take? I can do a listing agreement in about 4 minutes. I hope no clients are listening, but like we do fill in a blank paperwork. Like be a pro. Like you trust, you're not going to mess up something in a listing agreement. If so, you can write on it and have them in your trunk neatly folded. So she listed that house, loved her, whatever. Another friend called her. That was a $160,000 house. Sold it very quickly because she was happy, but I was honest with her. I'm like, you're not going to get 190 for it. Like, put it at 169. 179 is your 6 to 10 week, and 169's now. And she's like, oh, well, I have another house. Let's do it. So she did 169, sold in a week. She loved it. Actually, the agent she had it before sold the house. And sometimes they like that out of spite. Like,
right.
My bank account doesn't know the difference between spite checks and love checks.
Right.
And so then about 6 months later, one of her friends called and said, oh, Dare said you're the best in the business or whatever. You're a hardworking young man. I'd like you to come list my house. $100,000 house. The original lady calls me now a year later that January. Oh, I've got this rental house on Daddle Drive. I'm like, okay, list it. Sold it quick. She's like, maybe you can handle my other ones. I'm moving down to Pensacola. I'm like, oh, can I refer to you somebody down here? $400,000 referral down here, $160,000 referral for her son.
Wow.
Her house up there that's listed now for $289,000 and 7 rental houses. They're between $40,000 and $70,000. But she priced them right because she trusted me. And she sold 6 of these 7 houses. And I had both sides of 4 of those. Which means now I've gotten 8 new clients who like me. All of those people is their first house. 2 of them were the renters. You know what I mean? The other 3 were like just low-end investor guys. And I've got her house listed, which attracts other buyers. All because I was different. I was the only guy that was, Other people call in our market and send letters, but I'm going to beat them there. Like I did. And we had a new agent in our office start about a year and a half ago, and I took him out. And he started on the first of the month, so there were like 7. I'm like, you need to be at the office at 7 in the morning. We're going out. And there were 7 expired listings. We got 4 of them.
Wow.
And then no magic to the letter. It's kind of like the scripts. The scripts are good, but if you have some confidence and you can differentiate yourself, then you're going to get it.
Well, that's what Tom says. Tom says it's not the script. It's not the letter. It's not the postcard. It's just doing it.
Yeah.
It's the activity. It's the consistent activity. I think a lot of agents have their expectations too high. They're maybe expecting to get 4 out of 7 expireds when they should be happy to get 1 out of 7. Eventually they'll get to your status where they can do that. They have an adversarial relationship with the lead because you talked about, I want to recap just real quick, the FSBO experience. Yeah. A lot of agents that I know, even myself as a young agent, probably would have gotten pissed off and probably told that dude where to fly his kite. But you handled it the right way, and it's come back. You said to turn it into 9 deals.
But in all of that, FSBOs too, and it depends on how much depth you want to go into this. They both are the same thing, expired from FSBOs, which is I talk about being different, being professional, and everything that you're doing is marketing. Like everything you're doing is branding, and whether the people like you or not, they kind of like I got all those expired. Most of them didn't sell. Like if I had them today, those 32 listings, I'd be ecstatic because like 25 of them would sell. I think out of those 30, like 3 sold. A lot of disappointment. Some of them came back later and sold. But one of my greatest lead source ever, this crazy, wonderful house on the worst hill ever. Like you couldn't drive up the hill. Not if it was raining. Your tires would slip out. It was just a broken old driveway, but the house was top of the hill. $130,000 house, but it looked beautiful. So I get calls. That little house on Holly Hills, 7 other deals, and now from those 7 people have come other referrals. Year 3, year 4, they see you're sticking with it, you get referrals. Going back to expireds and for sale by owners and being a professional when you go. And this was something that I thought of myself. It had nothing to do with anybody else. But I was calling so many people because I had hundreds of them. I'm like, man, and a lot of them were like, well, I don't know who you are, so-and-so. So, and I don't know what Red Axe will provide or neighborhood info, but a tax office thing is super easy to go to. So I have my 2 monitors up, so I'll hit their neighbors real quick. Now, by the way, I can look on a tax office on my phone and find all 5 neighbors within about a minute and a half. Then you run the comps real quick in the neighborhood. We don't have big neighborhoods. Our biggest neighborhood is 180 residential houses like that are similar. Other than that, everything's 20 houses on hills. It's not rural, but it ain't big. So when I call him, if I get him on the phone, I've looked him up on Facebook, I've looked him up on LinkedIn, I know at least who he is. I've tried to. Most of the people, at least you know his name. I know his 5 immediate neighbors' names, and whoever's houses they sold, don't only get that the house sold, know the person's name. So if I get him on the phone, I'm like, hey, Bob, it's Colin Krieger with RE/MAX. I see your house is for sale by owner, and now I do this for every for sale by owner, every single one. Put yourself on Zillow, because that's where they're all going to go. They're going to go to Zillow and list it. But put yourself a thing to get a report for every new house that's listed, and half of them for sale, whatever, a few for sale by owners. And I said, listen, I'm not here. I promise you I'm not here to get your list, and I just want to see if you're willing to work with a realtor. And they're like, well, I hate realtors. I'm like, Bob, I hate most realtors too, man. I said, some people change their own oil. Some people do their own taxes. Heck, I fix my own toilet. He's like, well, I'm a master plumber, you know. I was like, I know that. I know where you work, Bob. I looked it up. You can come over. And no discussion of, now I qualify him a little more. That guy gave me that listing. I try to do that with everybody. Everybody call. If I have time and a lead, I want to find out what they do, what they know. And other people have called like, well, I don't know about no agents. I'm like, are you willing to pay the buyer's commission for it? And if so, I just want to come over to the house, give you my word. And I said, Miss Tanner's house sold down the block, right? And I said, the Johnsons next door to you are thinking about selling. I talked to them when their house expired or whatever. Even if I don't know them, don't lie, but be careful with semantics. People next door to you, the Johnsons. Dr. Johnson's next door to you. The Tanner's house sold. You provide some context, provide some expertise, and you're doing that. You're calling them, and you're literally not trying to pitch them anything. Like you're not. And then I say, well, you willing to work with a buyer's agent? I go to the house. I bring him. I'm not going to help advertise for sale by owner, but I'll bring him the stuff that's on our state website. The property condition form's the biggest one. I said, listen, if anybody's got a mortgage, you're going to need this. Nobody else is going to give this to you. It's not my listing agreement. It's nothing. Use this. Here's 10 tips for your house. Do you mind giving me a quick tour of the house? Tell me what you did to it in case I have a buyer. He's like, sure. I said, and then we do the tour. I'm like, real quick, can I take just a video walkthrough? I have video walkthroughs on about 300 houses in my market. Do you know how cool that is when happenstance somebody calls me about a for sale by owner or about listing their house? I'm like, I came before you bought it. And they're like, yeah. I'm like, well, I already got a video on my thing that I can send my clients. Is that okay? Or when another agent brings it up or something, I'm like, oh yeah, hold on, it's on my Dropbox. So I'm building that inventory that Google or Zillow would love to have of little things. But I'm showing some concern for him. I actually do want him to sell the house. I'm not pitching him, and I'm not going to give him comps or advertise his house for him. But I will. I'm going to do all that, and then I'll do the best thing that I learned from Buffini and these other guys. And like, listen, you do me a favor if we're hitting it off. Do you know anybody else in the neighborhood who's looking to buy or sell a house? And he was like, well, I did hear that the Johnsons were doing it. I'm like, I'm going to go knock on their door. Is that okay? And do you know so-and-so? Is it okay if I told you you came? And I'll point to every house. He knows them all. And when I leave, I will go to those houses and knock on the door. Like, I just talked to Bob. I said, he's selling his house. I'm trying to help him out. We're not listing, but he's doing it for sale. Do you know anybody who might want to buy his house? The same way you would do with your own listing, because he's just empowered you to do it. Then you can go as far as you want. You're not marketing his listing. You're telling them, do you know any buyers? Which is, when you go to the door, you're actually providing value. A lot of people are scared to make the call because they're not confident in themselves. Like they don't really think they're providing value. They just think they're reading a script and they're sort of dancing around it. Like,
does that create where does the follow-up go from there? If we go back to Bob, like how do you keep touching him so that you can maybe get
Now, we have two different ways. Like any CRM should have some automated thing that'll send them like 10 more tips to do in your house. The most powerful thing I've seen with for sale by owners is send them other houses that went under contract. Whereas if I was talking to realtors, I'd be very, very specific and similar. Or my listings, like, hey, by the way, no other $180,000 houses in our school district, 3-bedroom, 2-bath have sold since we started. That's not a me problem. That's a price problem or a condition problem, So with him, I'll give him something automated, and I will check back in. Now, the best thing I've ever done, and it's only gotten to happen 3 times because a lot of for sale by owners don't do them, but when the for sale by owner does an open house, and they put it up on Zillow, and most of them usually put it up Thursday, they don't, not far enough ahead of time. I try to drop everything I'm doing when they put it up, and I go buy some chips and water and cookies and bring it to their house. And then I ask them, and they're just shocked. They don't know what to do when you do that, but I'm actually helping them. Because, like, if those leads come in, I said, can you just do one more favor for me? Again, dude, I sell your house. I don't care. But you're going to – and then you create the narrative. You're going to tell somebody one day that I'm awesome. Because who does this? And he goes, probably am. I was like, would you mind telling the buyers that come in that I'm awesome? And your neighbors for me? Would you mind? I was like, I need that. And I was like, I'm not crossing the line. I'm not trying to help you too much. But and when I talk about controlling that narrative, it's also building that narrative in the community with other agents, which is – we're a car dealership. Like blue chip, good agents we're a car dealership. He's a guy selling, like if I want a 2013 Lexus right now, it's $30,000 at the big dealership. The private seller should be $26,000. The for sale by owners should be discounted. They're not participating in the same market. If they're using a discounted agent, they're on the used car lot. If they're using a good agent, they're on the big car lot, and otherwise they're a for sale by owner car lot. They should be discounting the thing. And so whenever somebody says, like, I bought a for sale by owner, I'm like, did you get a discount? You mind me asking? They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, no realtors were involved. Why didn't you get you should have got like 5% off the market, and I do that used car comparison. And it started to work in our market because I've started telling agents that. Now, I help a lot just like you do, talk to a lot of other agents, help them out. And it's not about recruiting them to our office. Like, I don't know, in our office doesn't help me any. I mean, I like having people around. And the people ask me, like, why do you help them so much? Why do you help them so much? I'm like, 78% of agents fail in a 5-year time span. Like, a girl from Century 21 office who just dropped off the board like 3 months ago. The house I listed this morning in the MLS, a river house, it's going to sell, was from her. Because her brother-in-law asked her, like, are you still an agent? I want to list this house. She's like, no, I just dropped off. She goes, who should I use? She's like, oh, Colin. We had a horrible transaction, but I was so nice to her. Professional, it worked out. I got a referral from somebody who just left an office that would cut our throat for a list.
That is fascinating.
But that's why you should help people. Like, be nice. Like, I mean, they're not going to be around.
Yeah, it's just the law of reciprocity. It all goes back to what Tony Robbins and Gary Vee are preaching in terms of that abundance. The more you give, the more you get. Don't give to get. It's just, it give without any expectation of a ROI, and it will come back to you tenfold.
It's really hard to do when you're starving.
It is.
It's hard. It's tough, and that was part of the discipline. Lucky that I was immersed in watching those videos for 3 months, and I came out because a lot of them were. I mean, Mike Ferry, language and listing, and just pushing through some of the objections and things. And then I got to a point of clarity where, like, listen, I want to win this long term. I have to have some people where I can't help. Like, I had somebody who I went to a listing appointment last week who's 25% up above the market without paying a realtor. And, like, so, they went on some website and somebody sent me a referral. I'm like, I'll go talk to him. And the husband's like, I don't like agents. I'm like, dude, I get it. I was like, I didn't even bring this is the first listing appointment I've ever been on where I didn't bring paperwork. And he's like, what do you mean? I'm like, I'm not taking this listing. I was like, I just came here because you got referred to me. I was like, you lost money when you bought it without an agent. I said, you can say you hate agents all you want, the system's fixed. I said, I don't care. I was like, but you have a $210,000 house you're trying to get $249,000 for that you paid $200 for. I was like, you're shattered the record for the neighborhood. Because we have a lot of military guys and they sell them to other military guys and they think that means that they should trust each other and they're right. And I said, I'm not dogging you. I said, but I've been to hundreds of listing appointments and I've never not brought the paperwork. I was like, that's how far off you are. And I said, I gave him a couple tips. I'm like, here's a couple quick tips. Here's the property condition disclosure form. And I said, if I'll list it 15% above market and nobody will work harder than me and I'll be the best. But I said, I can't if y'all are really in this tight of a spot, And, I'll get them in a few weeks.
Well, it's the real talk. I mean, it's serving you at a high level because at the very least, that seller will leave that appointment going, that Colin Krieger's a straight shooter.
Yeah.
And
it's hard to act like that when you don't have any money.
It sure is. And I'm very quick to make that distinction. I did it today when I was teaching. I was like, it's easy for me to sit here and kind of say this and kind of preach at you guys, whereas I'm not starving to death.
Yeah, and the for sale by owner, that's a pitch, I guess, that's developed over time because it is hard to call. But I mean, a lot of for sale by owners, if the in-person part of it, if you bring them the note in person and help them, now the open house thing's gold. Like they don't know what to do.
Well, and my situation, like I would help them market. Like I did have a line in the sand.
Yeah.
I would not comp their house out, but I looked at it through the lens of content creation. So if I did that walkthrough video, I'd get their permission to put it on YouTube, and I'd do some social media marketing. And back then I was heavy on Craigslist because I could take the video, I can embed it in a Craigslist ad, I could have a link to my Boomtown site, and I could generate all these leads from it. And but I would do the same thing. The seller would say, or the FSBO seller would say, hey, Jason, why are you doing this? Like, there's got to be a catch. Like, what's in it for you? We don't really understand
and
what you're doing.
And you know how much they appreciate when you're like, you're going to have buyers. And I was like, I'm the most powerful. Why didn't you sell my house when it was listed? What a great question, Karen, which is what every script says. Hey, right. Karen, what a great question.
Yeah, validate
the best
question.
way for me to get buyers isn't from getting them from little Zillow ads. It's from having listings with houses. And I said, you're familiar with the market. You remember that house on Cedar we sold? Now, we, relative term, we, the RE/MAX, sold. Not me, but I say we. The semantics part of it. That one we sold around the corner. I'm sure you know that it sold for, $180. I said, we get calls for buyers on that. I said, that's where it comes from. I said, that's the value as much as anything is selling. Your house is for me having a listing is meeting new people. And I said, as long as I want to meet everyone in the world. And I said, we talk to agents who get stressed out who are trying to do everything. They're trying to do Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and they're trying to do it full time, and they use that as an excuse or a heel or whatever that to not do anything.
Right.
Whereas if you kind of put it in perspective and say, like, what's a huge brand that nobody can ignore, like Apple? They got 12% of the smartphone market in the world. Like 12%. A top agent in our market's got 2.8%, and like a single agent in your market gets more than 1%. Is pretty crazy. The definition of dominance by like a lot of the big coaches I've talked to, like if a team or an agent got more than 5%, in any market, that's pretty insane. Not everybody's going to like you. Like if you have 10% of the people have your name recognition alone, and 10% of those connect it with being a realtor, that's 1% of the market. Forget just having to like you or trust you. And so a lot of people are really worried about that. But it doesn't work to call it for sale by owner and be full of shit. I mean, it just doesn't.
Right.
And if you really want to help them, expired's a good way to do it. Stuff that expired 6 months ago is a good way to do it. But that's just one thing. So
a lot of people don't like me and they never even met me. So
yeah, I can completely understand that.
It's a very similar conversation that I've had with FSBOs, because they'll say, all right, well, if you're going to do this limited marketing on YouTube or Facebook, and other buyers are going to see it, and those buyers are going to be represented by realtors that aren't you. What's in it for you? And it was the same conversation. It was like, we're in a relationship, referral-based, word-of-mouth business. I've never met you. You've never met me. So it is in my best interest to meet people I've never met and foster relationships. And if I help you sell this house, even if I don't make $1 from it, you're going to have good things to say about me, right? And they'd be like, absolutely. And I'm like, then it's a win for me. Does that make sense to you? And they're like, it makes total sense. In fact, it separates me from any other realtor they've ever met before in their life.
And Bob, I got to ask you one question. I said, are you selling this house because you hate owning houses? And he's like, no, I don't hate owning houses. I'm like, you like owning houses, right? You think you're ever going to eat dinner or have a drink in the rest of your life with anybody trying to buy or sell a house? Yeah. You see where I'm headed, buddy? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you're much more valuable to me as an advocate and a friend than whatever the commission is. I don't even know what it would be on your house. And if you do that and mean it, I mean that when I say it to somebody, because like if the spirit he has when you walk out of there, I can't tell you how many people walk up to me and tell you, like, dude, my dad said so and so. He's like, what's wrong with you? I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you told me you weren't going to bring a listing agreement. You didn't bring a listing agreement. I'm like, well, yeah. Like, so what? Like, I mean, if he wants to be part of the 3% of that people that do for sale by owner, I don't care. And I was like, some people file their own taxes. He's like, yeah, I'm an accountant, I'm like, you damn right, I know you're an accountant.
You're actually doing that particular seller a great disservice.
Yeah.
If you were to take a listing that's so far inflated over market.
Oh yeah.
I mean, that he's going to end up hating you. As all of his friends, his family members are going to end up hating you and talking nasty.
I mean,
about
in my mind, I have a countdown clock of 19 residential listings right now that could potentially hate me. Because and that's where you get dangerous into getting. You have too many like close personal friends listings. Yeah. Because they're not going to listen to you on price, and then when stuff goes wrong, they have a hard time bringing it up, and they don't want to cancel the listing or not renew it or whatever. And they say I have to have much more discussions. And I mean, a lot of that stuff with listings on the flip side is and buyers is preparing them ahead of time. I've got a little video, I've got pieces of paper that I send them, all kind of stuff to get them ready.
We're at 39 minutes, Travis.
Yep.
All right, we're doing good. This has been a lot of nuggets.
Oh.
I feel like we could sit here and talk about this forever, but I did want to ask you something. The FedEx envelope.
Yeah.
Was that an idea you came up with out of thin air?
Yeah, I was going to the UPS store to make my. When I got in there, look, again, you have to buy your own signs. And the cool thing that happens in this basement and behind every real estate office in town is that there's a bunch of old beat-up signs. So I went and got a bunch of the beat-up signs behind our office, and admittedly from a couple other offices, I called them and said, what do y'all do with your old signs? And, dude, they all liked me, and people knew me from around town. They're like, dude, if you want to come get that beat-up sign. I'm like, all right. And so I went and had my buddy at the UPS store do stickers for me because it was cheaper than buying the whole panel. Not by much, and in hindsight, at the time opportunity was stupid, but it's imposing to think you have to have 35 signs and 30. Even right now, I'm down to 20 lock boxes, and I would have had to buy 2 more yesterday, except our board office is closed because of the conference that brought me to Fairhope. But I was there, and I was while he was always late with stuff, so I was sitting there waiting. I got the girl to print my expired letters, and I said, I need some of those brown, the full-size envelopes so I don't have to fold them, They look pretty cool, and she's like, oh, we're out of those. I'm like, y'all are out of manila envelopes. It's a UPS store. And Jason's like, just take some of the dang overnight ones. And dude, as soon as he said it, like, because you're going to open that. Like, you're going to open that envelope no matter what's in it. Because you're like, cool, like it's something.
Right.
Like it's something of value. It's just something cool. And it doesn't matter what's inside. Like, nobody's going to send and they give them to you for free. I mean, I would assume maybe taking the ones from the post office could possibly be some, you can't put stuff in a mailbox, but and the ones from the post office might be some sort of violation. But I don't know, FedEx is probably putting me on some sort of list right now for doing it. But I mean, UPS has them too, but they're free everywhere. You can even get the little pieces of paper that go on them.
Right.
I mean, but probably 25% of people see me walking up to their house because it's somewhat suspicious when a large white male's coming up at 7:30 in the morning to your house. But having that knowledge of knowing, and a lot of times I pull up to the house, tax record, tax comps on my phone, 7:30 in the morning, spend that 2 minutes there, and somebody's already walking up. What are you doing? And I'm like, I was just looking up. I'm sorry, Mr. Johnson. I saw your thing. And by that time, I said, by the way, I already sent you or your daughter a message on Facebook. I hope it was you. And my loan says, sorry if it's too early in the morning. Saw your listing expired. As you can see, I'm a worker bee. Please reach out if you want to talk about it. I think your house has a good possibility of selling. And some of them will be like, yeah, I saw that. I thought maybe it was spam or something. I'm like, no, that was me. It was like, blah, blah, blah. Here's my card. Can I take a look at the house? It's always important to get in there and see what they like, what they don't like. And, the number one thing I heard over and over again from expired listings for sale by owners, people who were just putting their house on the market, everybody. And it's on my top 10. It's my fourth question. Once I know once I have some rapport, I have 5 follow-up questions like, hey, do you know anybody buying or selling or whatever? When's the last time you heard from the person who sold you the house? Like once I feel like I have the listing, and most, probably over 90% of my listing appointments I'm getting, but it's got to be over that. I know exactly what it is. Anyway, but I'm saying, when's the last time you heard from the agent who sold it to you? I just want to know from my stats. There's only been 2 or 3 that I've ever heard from them, ever. And some of them are Coldwell Banker agents because they do have a systemized magazine thing. And there's one office that does some of the follow-up, but most of them have never heard from them. Or they get a once-a-year automated birthday card. So that's been a focus of mine. And I am fortunate because I have a bunch of parties. Like I'm involved with a bunch of charity events and parties. So I can, there's some there. I'm inviting them to stuff. I'm all over the place. So they get to see me and touch me. But that's the number one fault. And that's why I tell people, like, and Red-X, I think, has that search available, find people who bought their house 5 to 7 years ago, or heck, if an agent leaves the market. I had 2 of them that were pretty big agents. Like one of them's down in, I don't want to say who she is, but she was doing 40 deals a year for like 10 years. She left the market. She was trying to sell a book of business. Of course, she wanted like 10 or 20 grand for it. And I'm like, that's crazy. I told her, I said, I'll give you 40, 30, 20. She'd never heard of it. There's a guy who does a agent retiring CEU course nationally. And that's what he talks about. He's like, tell me you'll give them 40% the first year, 30 the second, 20 forever. But the people have to call, it can't just be they have to call the original agent and the agent sends it to you. Because otherwise they're not really your people.
Right.
And anyway, so I had another top agent in our office in Starkville say, she goes, well, she didn't even call me about it. It's ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, what's the big deal? She's like, what do you mean? I'm like, you have her book of business. It's in the MLS. She's not sending them birthday cards or anything anymore. I'm like, start sending them stuff. I was like, unless it's an active agent, it's not even, by the way, it's not unethical or illegal to send an they sold the house, transaction's over, they're not there. You can send them birthday card if you can find out their birthday, but you can send them notes or whatever the heck you want, in my opinion. Take them over. But when these agents retire or aren't gonna follow up at, like, most agents aren't, the agents that are definitely not following up after a closing. Wait 3 or 4 weeks, write them a sincere note, say, like, I really appreciate your, doing the transaction with us. If you have any questions about the house, I'll hook you up with the seller.
So in addition to these party invites, are you personally doing birthday cards, anniversary cards, all that stuff?
I've just started doing that now. It was part of the going through the Buffini thing where I probably had it too easy. Now, I have done it for my top referral people, and it isn't automated. Now, I'm only about 6 or 8 weeks into there. I was doing a lot of calls. 3 week, 3 month, 9 month checkup calls, seeing how the house is going. We have the homestead stuff. I love calling about homestead when people buy houses because I have to call people like 5 or 6 times. A lot of people don't do it. They're just lazy. And I'll text them, I'm like, you're losing $1,200 on Monday. And they're like, oh. And I was like, I'll meet you there if you want to go. So I admittedly, but I saw it coming. I said, look, by year 3, I need to have a systemized thing. And right now my systemized thing is my wife going, dummy, do these. And I get home and she's like, hey, dummy, have you done these? I forget who said it. It was one of Big Speakers. It might have been Les Brown or somebody who said, the people are like, well, how do you get motivated at work? And you got to stay busy or whatever. And he said, imagine your kids are sitting there watching you work. And are they proud of you? Like, not in a hidden camera, like sitting there watching you work. And if you can work like that, like we had somebody got involved with like ransomware. Some in our office, a network security guy came in to rerun some stuff. And he's like, I'm going to have to get on your computer. And he's like, you want to tell me anything now? I'm like, you don't need to dig. But he's like, you've only been on 11 websites. I'm like, yeah. I was like, I got kids. And I screw around. I'm on Facebook and I play, but like I got kids. And that's my reputation for a lot of people in town. They're like, well, how do you do all this stuff? Because I do a lot of social stuff. And, but they know that I'm at work. Like my light's on at work at 6:30 in the morning. And this time of year is great because my light's on. And, I make sure I take a picture when I get there. Because of some rule changes in Mississippi, I have to start over my Realtor Facebook page. But I have there's a Colin Krieger Facebook page. I have a Good for Business, which is a small business blog and positive news stories, and then I'll have Colin Krieger Remax Partners. Colin Krieger was part of those two before, but they just really rammed some stuff down us in Mississippi about my name can't be bigger than the office name.
Yeah, we heard.
Phone. It's right.
I heard it's heading this way.
Yeah, and I understand that the office phone number should be on everything. That my name being bigger than the office name, it really hurts for like Century 21, where it's Century 21. Jason Will and Associates or whatever.
Yeah.
It's hard for your name to be smaller than that.
Right.
And, my phone number is 329 sold. I got to cheat. That's my license plate. That's my website. And it's bigger than the office number everywhere. So I had to do some rebranding stuff and throw away a lot of merchandise just to be careful. But the first time I called our director for the state, and I had met him a couple times. He's like, hey, I figured you'd be calling. I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, you're popular these days. I'm like, yeah, no, that's what comes with selling some houses.
Yes,
and
he
he goes, this is what you need to do with this. This is what you need to do with this. And he's like, I was like, I'm going to massage my Facebook page. He's like, just make another one. That way every post where the name of it is everything.
Right.
And it's not keeping them separate because like we did a leadership group for our county and we were going around and it was marketing day. So they went to like the TV station and a really good professional, like, Southeastern level marketing group in our area that does some pretty big campaigns. And she's like, I'm so glad Colin's here. And she pulled up my Facebook page in the background. She's like, how do y'all know Colin works at Remax? Have you ever seen a house on Colin's page? She's like, Colin had a house on his page since the first 3 months he started. And he goes, I know why he stopped. It's because Gary Vaynerchuk told him to stop. But she goes, can y'all count to 5 guys? And she didn't even look at the screen. She's like, 1, it was like me and the kid. 2, me at a chamber meeting. 3, me and the 4, and they're like 5. And she's like, anybody notice anything? And they're like, there. There's a little Remax hat in the corner. And she's like, 1, 2, 3. She's like, oh, Colin's at the office again talking about so-and-so's ice cream shop. And that is, now I have to mix up how often I do it. But people know. People do know. And I've heard you talk about, like, if people can't tell you're a realtor going on your page relatively quickly, you do have a problem. And a lot of people are ashamed. That's part of the shame. I don't want to bother my friends. I don't want to do this, you have to believe in yourself. You have to have some value, that you have something to offer. And a lot of people are taught that the value proposition is, golly gee, I can make a video for your house. Not a cool, like the 3D video is different and stuff like that. But I have this 42-point marketing plan. I don't bring one to a listing appointment. Right before I walk in, I've already got their email because I've vetted them. I'm not wasting my time on people who aren't ready to list. I send it, and then when I sit down, I said, there's only 3 outcomes from this meeting that can possibly happen. You're going to choose to list the house with me. You're going to choose to list the house with somebody else, or I'm going to decide not to list your house, which is a great, Kevin Ward has that. It's a great ending line. Yeah. And I said, if you check your email now, I sent you the same 42-point marketing plan that every other agent's going to bring in here. And I said, if that's important to you, look, I'm going to do all that stuff. I spend more money than anybody else. You've seen me. That's the reason you called me. Here's what I'm going to do that nobody else is doing. I'm going to find your buyers. Who do you think wants to buy your house? And I know the average nurse is going to buy this, an Air Force Base guy is going to do this. By the way, I'm asking them for leads while I'm doing this. That is asking for leads. He's like, who do you think's going to buy this? And he's like, well, I know so-and-so nurses, probably the income's about right for $250,000. I'm like, that's right. And you maybe 2 municipal employees, like a cop and somebody who works at the tax office. He's like, all right. He's like, what I'm going to do, and this is what I did when I had no listings or a few listings or no buyers. I said, I'm going to take your listing and 2 or 3, on 1 or 2 on each side of the price range. I'm going to print up on a single piece of paper, my info in the back, the house is on there. I said, I'm going to go. This is where we're getting the cookies. I know that's what you're waiting for. You're like, can we fit cookies in the first hour? This is where the cookies come in. My wife's texting me now. So I say, and this comes back from, I worked in a restaurant business. Like, people complain about Facebook. I only got 11 responses. Like, that's the MF word. When I worked at my restaurant, my buddy bought our restaurant back that I had. We just didn't make enough money when we were there. He owns it now, and he was asking me about Facebook. I'm like, dude, I used to have to go to the office building and hand out 100 pieces of cheesecake. You can get 16 likes on your menus. Why do they like your menu? Like, for free. You haven't spent any money. Like, quit complaining. Like, that's amazing. If you average 30 likes per post on Facebook, even just as a realtor and putting pictures of your kids, you're doing great. So anyway, back to that. So we're talking about, this is where I learned that from, or taught myself this before the World Wide Internet. I'm going to find your buyers. I'm going to get a list, and I do this, and I love doing it. I'm going to get a list of 2 houses on either side of the price range. I'm going to put what it would cost per month, a little bank logo. They can print them up. I can print them up, or whatever. I'm either going to take some handmade cookies my wife spent all night cooking, or I'm going to take some dang Kroger cookies and wrap them in a fairly fancy aluminum foil thing you can buy and tie a little ribbon on them. Now I might put... You can't put them in the foil first and put them in the microwave, but you can. We don't have an oven at work. I used to have a toaster oven. As long as I know we're in a fairly clean basement, so the health board's not coming here. By the way, I'm just saying this. I'm not saying I've done it. Under the hood of your car is extremely hot. So when you put these cookies in there, you walk in, you put them on a cute plate. Okay, now you are walking into a hospital. Now, if you're still listening, is it hard to walk around a hospital? I can go anywhere in my dang hospital. I got a plate of hot cookies. I walk into a doctor's office with nurses, right? You walk in, you've got 3 or 4 listings. You will go to the front desk. You're like, hey, Stacy, because Karen was the other girl. So, hey, Stacy, I need you to do me a favor. Can you dump me out? I'm trying to help this guy out. He's selling his house. I don't want anything from you. Y'all have a break room or a fridge or something? Can you hang this up here just for a couple days for me? So there's some cookies in there. You keep the cookies, all right? You got that? And other people, they start sniffing around like, what are you doing, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I'm trying to sell this house. He's a really good guy. I got 2 other houses on there. Then y'all's kind of price range, right? Or whatever. And they're like, whose house is that? I'm like, Tommy's. They're like, wait. Somebody comes out of the back, and it's Eric so-and-so. This, by the way, this is part of being efficient. He's like, that's my brother's house? I'm like, yeah, I know it's your brother's house. Because I looked it up on Facebook. Now, if he's not there and sees it later, he just saw Colin Krieger, all those girls behind the desk, either saw Colin Krieger bringing us cookies, not wanting anything from us except a favor to help somebody sell a house, which is what we're supposed to be doing, right?
Right.
That's our job. All those people saw that. Even if none of them buy it and I get no leads from it, if his brother knows that I did it intentionally because I start with his family's businesses, great. He's got to think I'm a marketing genius for going to... If he doesn't see it, then he just thinks I'm the guy who came in there who's trying to sell his brother's house, which is what I'm trying to do. Like, I'm not being dishonest. The kicker to it with social media now is you're doing that and you go... Stacy, I want you to do me one favor. You already helped me out. I appreciate it. I said, I got a $5 Starbucks gift card for you. I said, can you get a couple of girls and I can take a picture? I got this business blog. Tell me some good things about the office. I'm just going to put it on there. There won't be a word about real estate, I swear to God. And I said, now I have my little card. I said, y'all want to like it? I averaged 3 likes for the business, for that post, for every person in that picture. Every one of them. I mean, people, he was the sweetest thing, and I do a sincere thing like, so-and-so, ornithology or whatever they are. Bunch of good people. Stacy's the best. Isn't that so cool that she's about to be an RM, blah, 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 blah. Sincere, likable stuff. Didn't mention I was there for real estate at all. They got cookies. They like me. I can go back there anytime I want, do the same exact thing again, take a picture of them. It's helped their business. Like, they've gotten better. Everybody's one. Now it's on social media. It's getting shared. And when we talk about being the social mayor of your town, I do that. Go to 4 or 5 businesses like that. You spread the pictures out over a couple different mediums. Follow up with the people if they like me. Like, I really appreciate you letting me today. It's really going to help Carl and his house out. Blah blah blah. It's good to go to ones that are relatives of people, but just go to any businesses because you can go in there and you have no other reason to be there, right? Like,
so simple.
You're helping them, and then. That goes out, and then I go to a little Chamber of Commerce luncheon, and I don't stay. If it's after hours, I don't stay for the whole thing. I go in, take a couple of pictures or whatever. People say hi. So I report on a lot of stuff. Any business thing that's in any of the 4 local papers or TV, I put it on my blog. I try to do like so-and-so is the best. I don't even know if I do that much video. I know a lot of people are scared of video. I need to do more. The videos I do are valuable or Tuesday mornings for my sellers. And anytime you think like, I should call somebody. If you're scared to call them, send them a video. If you're calling an expired and they don't answer, hang up, take a video, and text it to them. You all know what difference from a cell phone and a landline. Hey, it's Colin over at RE/MAX. I'm sorry I missed you. I didn't want you to think I was some creepy salesman. I'm just reaching out to see if you're working or thinking about listing with another agent. I see here that we have a couple mutual friends on Facebook. I'm sure you know who I am. If you want to reach out, reach out. If you don't, you don't. I wish you the best. And it's sincere, it's nice. And who does that? Like when people have birthdays, I send them Facebook videos personally on my phone as opposed to, hey, happy birthday. That way I don't have to look at that message later in the day like, I really want to tell everybody I appreciate you spending 2 entire seconds of your day, yelling at the other people to do it. But when I heard Vaynerchuk say that about a year into my career, like, be the social mayor of your town, he told one of your friends, the girl who's with Bob Corcoran and all those people, I'm going to look her up. He talks about, like, throw the parties. I was already throwing the parties. Like, we do 4 parties at our year at our house that average about 200 or 300 people, average raising about $4,000. We just had one Sunday that came from our house and went to a local restaurant, and we raised $5,000 for the Arts Council. And I'm the face of it, but, like, the Arts Council I go on TV twice because the Arts Council didn't want to go on TV to promote it. I have a good relationship with the media because they get to be a sponsor of the event. We raised $5,000 on a Sunday for an Oktoberfest. I was still the host of the party. We get all the stuff donated. Like, people are fighting to donate stuff for the party. Like, their beer companies will give you beer in every city in the country. A lot of times they'll give you banners. And once you have banners and you have logos on there, you look professional, you're doing well. So, Gary, that's throwing the party, being the cool high school kid. The other part is reporting on what's going on. And you can, if you're disciplined, I would go out every week and every single week take a video of a local business and then a video of, like, a community champion person or something. But you don't have to if you just take a picture. If you stop when you're at Starbucks and take a picture of the girl behind the counter and say how cool she is. By the way, I mentioned Starbucks. You can buy those. You can also go to Juva Juice or the local coffee shop and say, hey, instead of buying 300 dang ads on Zillow, or $300 worth of ads, go to them and say, hey, I know y'all are a coffee shop. I don't know how to do this business blog. I'm not asking for anything for free unless you want to give me something for free. I know you'd like business. I know you need cash flow. Even if they're rolling, like this, I got 50 places here I'd be all excited about. Can you give me $500 worth of business cards for a free cup of coffee? So 100 free cups of coffee, and I'll give you $300. And they're like $350. You're like $325. You've got those cards. You use those to give out, and then you tell the girls when you give them out, like, all I want you to do is tag them in the photo when you take, if they're socially savvy, and just say, hey, Colin gave this to me. We can't wait to see you. They're not going to redeem them all. He wins, you win, you got it, Little dirty secret. By the way, wedding planners and florists throw away all their flowers like on Monday and Tuesday. And I'm just saying, imagine if you go to them, that's gold, buddy. Y'all listen, that's gold. Y'all take those flowers and without photos, bring them to an old folks home and take your name tag off. You're never going to see a picture of me doing that crap. And if these weren't just agents listening, I wouldn't even say it. But you can also go to businesses in the same respect. Go to some place where a good checkout person is. Or I brought one to Kroger, or the girl that does around Jack's. There's people that, like a hostess. Bring her flowers, even if you bought them. But you get them for free, and then take a picture with the business and keep yourself out of it. It's on your page. They know it came from you. Like, it's on my normal Colin Krieger page. Does anybody know Joy, the checkout girl at Hardee's? Holy crap! Like 1,200 shares on my personal page. I brought her some flowers, and I didn't even say the flowers were from me. I said, Joey's florist gave me these flowers because they wanted to make sure everybody knew how great Brenda was at the checkout at Hardee's. She's like a superstar. Like, that's $4,000 or $5,000 worth of Facebook ads, and you're doing something right. You're out in the community. The apex of my wife told me I think you think you're done. But about 3 months ago, we have Air Force Base, 3,000 employees, and they call me, and I see the number, and it's the main person who's the lieutenant colonel who runs the base. And she's like, well, Colonel Gosney, we have a problem. We have this concert, the concert Friday. I'm like, yeah, I'm sponsoring it. And she's like, anyway, they need the generator broke. I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, well Trace Adkins or whatever just landed. The 100 kilowatt generator's gone, and it costs like $4,000 to rent one. Do you know where to get one? Like, I was smiling. I have no godly idea where to get one. But their first instinct wasn't to call the mayor or the city planner or the county supervisor or anybody else. They thought, Colin knows how to get everything. Top of mind. Colin, and then I called Columbus Light and Water, and I'm like, hey, I know the president because I go to their events. I go to, like, the Chamber of Commerce things, and I've met him from there. And I'm like, hey, 100 kilowatt generator sounds pretty big. He's like, it's enough for like 4 city blocks to run it for a week. I was like, you got one? He's like, yeah. I'm like, the base needs one. He's like, dude, they're our biggest customer. We'll be there in an hour. Boom, like, done. Even if I couldn't have solved it, the fact that they called me, I was so thrilled about that. I'm like, that's it. That's what you want. You want to be the guy that, like, people call me all the time, like, hey, Colin, what are they doing with that? When's that new restaurant open? And I'm like, I'll call. It's usually another realtor I got to call. Then I write a little article, like anything that you think of. That was something I learned from the newspaper. if somebody went to something and didn't take a picture, I was going to fire them. That was our rule. And one time, now he's a big-time reporter, so we didn't fire him. But one of our guys went to a city councilman, and we had this awesome allegedly drunk and high city councilman. And, dude, he wore house slippers, like big poofy slippers to a council meeting. And he came back and told it to me, but he didn't have a picture. I'm like, are you kidding me? And if you look on Facebook now, what trends other than Kavanaugh and Trump is local stuff? And it doesn't even have to be controversial. Like, I'd think off the top of my mind who has the oldest established business in here and just go take a picture of them and say how amazing they are. And mean it and not mention yourself and just go get her flowers. Stop by the florist first, say how amazing she is, And if you raise other people up, you'll win. And none of that most of the stuff, if you scroll down my Facebook page, has nothing to do with real estate at all. And it's just, and whenever I'm on TV, I'm trying to praise other people because that's how I feel. Like it's, when giving stuff at Christmas makes you feel good. It's addictive, and when you do that, then you win. The only downside to it is and the reason that I need to do you or Vaynerchuk documenting for a personal real estate page is because a lot of, the only people I think I don't do real estate all day is probably sellers because they're probably sitting there like, my house hadn't sold.
Yeah, he's on TV
it's 6 months on the market, and he's here throwing Oktoberfest and planning for St. Patrick's Day and this other thing. So I want to have that there because I spend majority of my time that charity part of it's 10%. My kids are 50, But the part we go back to is defining your value proposition. What are you providing? Being a professional. Your own standards. 10 deals and making $30,000 a year is fine for a lot of people. Don't think you have to be. I'm stir crazy. I'm going absolutely stir crazy, borderline anxiety attacks last 3 weeks not having a deal. That doesn't need to be for everybody. I've got a chip on my shoulder. When I was at Papa John's, I needed to be National Manager of the Year. When I was playing hacky sack, I went to hacky sack tournaments. I have to be that. Not everybody has to be that, and it doesn't make sense for them to be it. And another important thing that Vaynerchuk mentions all the time, and I know we're always harping on, don't let somebody else define your work-life balance. That was part of my problem when I was in the newspaper. We did phenomenal. We bought other newspapers. We were huge papers, so brought the paper from 20 pages to 64, which is a big deal in advertising. But I was worried about, I got to spend time with my kids, whenever. There's plenty of people who go home with their kids and are like this the whole night. And they aren't with their kids. You know what I mean? And I'm guilty of that sometimes, but I look for adventures. We went to the top of the Tennessee mountain for the eclipse. I thought we had a private school in our town. I figured every single parent would do that. We were the only ones. I'm I don't know. Most of my kids are pretty bright, but they're that's what they're going to remember. The same thing they're going to remember. When most of the time we do big events, I take the picture for the big check. I bought a big check once, and as soon as I got it, I felt sick. The newspaper doesn't run pictures like that for a reason because they're marketing. And not every event, the ones at my house are somewhat, but it isn't Colin Krieger presents the Oktoberfest. I pay for a sponsorship like everybody else does on them. And we average 20 sponsors for most of our events now. But you're the guy that can get that done eventually. It takes a little while. But you got to be the guy that gets that stuff done, I want to go real quick to the reason that I started. We're doing the parties. We're from New Orleans, having crawfish boils at our house, and we're having a Christmas party in crawfish boil, and we're having the third year for the crawfish boil. And I made this sign. He's not Shinarana, but by the way, I had a Shinarana 7-figure client buy a house from me 3 years ago.
Really?
He's a very good guy. He got hit by. I'll have to ask Alexander about it one day. But anyway, I was doing a billboard, and this guy he does bankruptcy. His name's Bill Cunningham, and he does 329 Bill. And it's a classic, just simple bill, 329 Bill. And he says, too many bills, call Bill. And I'm like, dude, what I'm doing. I don't know if you've seen the billboard in my pictures, but I called my buddy at the billboard company. I'm like, JT, the billboard guy Thompson at Lamar, who could sell billboards anywhere in the country. He's in B&I. I said, JT, I want to do his exact billboard, but with 329 sold. And put too many houses, ? And he sent me a proof. I'm like, no. Cut my head off, dude. And we put it under his billboard on a main run just for a month and a half. And he's like, dude, it went to corporate before we printed it. You got to get him to sign off. And I'm like, I'd met him a couple times. He's an attorney, so he's hot or cold. I go in. He's like, literally out of a movie. He's like, sure, whatever, good idea. And then we talked about other stuff for an hour. And he's like, That's where I remember you from. He goes, you're the party guy. I'm like, yeah. And up till then, it had just been parties at my house, and some people chipped in money, some people didn't. Nothing to do with newspaper, real estate, marketing, anything. And he's like, what's the cost to sponsor that? I'm like, $200. Like, and I walked out with that check, and that's that point in the movie where I was like, people will pay for this. People will pay. When you talk about Vaynerchuk or anybody else cashing in on the brand, like, you buy my book and pay me to speak, and he's branched out into shoes. I don't need shoes yet, but I could sell socks, like Colin Krieger the sock. I thought of like a closing gift that would be just my name spray painted on a plunger would be a great closing gift. Like, who would, like, they'd remember that you gave it to. But that was the point in the movie, and I immediately like, oh crap, I can sell sponsor. And then I'm like, well, I can't make money for something at my house. That's not fair. I'm going to make money because all immediately at $50 and $75 sponsorships, it's affordable. The people know they're going to get value because I've already pushed up their businesses before. So I'm like, $50, $100, whatever you can give me, write the check directly to the charity. And we did one we were talking about what to do the first one for, and my wife's like, what do you want to do it for? I'm like, well, I kind of want some live music, but we can't pay for it. And I said, Lance, our friend Lance, I'm like, what's Melissa's favorite charity? Because he's a musician. And she's like, the Homeless Coalition. I'm like, oh, really? Who else is on the board? And she named like 3 other people. Like, all 3 of their husbands were musicians. I'm like, we got our charity now. And now he runs the music at all my events. Like this Oktoberfest event, I said, hey, Lance, can you be there on this date? He booked 4 bands. Like, and 4 of the biggest bands in our little area. They all played for free. And they're grateful to do it because they actually get thanked and get exposure. Like when we take the picture for the social media, it says, thanks, Lance and these guys. Please understand them. Like when I do events that have a program, it's got their bio on them and how to book them. Whereas these others, you write checks to the American Heart Race for $200, you don't get any real credit out of that.
Right.
Whereas I'm thanking them. The only time I think I'm aggravating on social media is the week before an event, Oktoberfest. But I thank them. And then after, you be a professional and write them all a thank you note. You make the director of the dang organization write them a thank you note. You make the bands write them a thank you note. You make them, or you thank the band. Everybody thanks everybody for their little $50, $100 donations that add up to $3 or $4 grand, not for the United Way, but for these little groups that actually need the money.
Right.
Like that need it. And again, we haven't talked about real estate in that whole 3 minutes, but that's it. You're a community leader. You're there. It
all comes full circle.
Yeah.
All right. Let's tell everybody. I mean, I have to say, this has been one of the most nugget-filled podcasts that I've ever done. So thank you very much for that. I just feel like we could go on and on and on. And, of course, we will in other forms of media. But it's time for you to give your plug. How can people get in touch with you? Websites, email, phone? What do you got for us?
Colin Krieger is pretty easy to find, and if you're watching this, it was Krieger. There's only 2 other Colin Kriegers. One's a mortgage broker in Alaska. One is, I forget what he does, but he's the opposite of me. He's got 3 sons, and one of my buddies from back home picks on me all the time. Like, because it's like me and my kids at Chick-fil-A for Daddy-Daughter Day. Like, every Saturday morning is Daddy-Daughter Day. And if I have an appointment, they're going on it. Like, I tell my people, if you give me 411 on Saturday, my daughters are coming. They'll play in the yard. They can climb trees. Don't let your dog eat them. I said, but this guy, like, he lives in Canada. The other Colin Krieger, he knows me. His kids are, like, hanging off the side of a mountain, like over, like his profile pictures. My kids are like, woo, the ice cream store, and his kids are like overlooking a peaceful valley over Alberta, Canada. And then they're hiking, and then they're at a museum, and my kids are at like a Mumford & Sons concert. I'm like, well, anyway, 329-SOLD is my cheesy phone number. So that's 662-329-SOLD in North Mississippi, 329sold.com. Colin Krieger's, no matter how you spell it, there's only 4 of them on Facebook. They're pretty easy to find. Columbus Air Force Base is a key thing to remember. Mississippi University for Women is up there, which is about 3,000 people. And then Mississippi State University, which is pretty big. And other than that, there's a huge steel mill. There's a Yokohama tire plant, an Airbus factory. And a lot. I'll go back to that real quick. Keeping up from being in the newspaper, I made contacts with all that stuff, so I understand what's important. And it's the community. Like, I would have never gone to a council meeting before. But, like, if y'all went to one every 3 or 4 months and just stuck at the beginning of the meeting, said hi to all the councilmen. Who are you here? I'm JWRE. There's one tonight, I think. We own the place across the street. Just tell you we appreciate you doing. Can I call you sometime for lunch? Those are good guys to know when somebody buys a house and they need a street light or a pothole or something. Anyway, Columbus Air Force Base, Starkville, Mississippi. We don't have a ton of people coming. People do come in. It's just most of the referrals are in state.
Thank you for joining me in my basement.
thank you. I'm never too busy for your referrals. I'm never too busy to hang out in the basement. I'm glad they stuck to number ones.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Colin Krieger, thank you so much. This has been incredible.
Thank you, man.
Thank you, everybody, for listening. I want to encourage you to go to MomentumUniversity.com and check out the real estate conference that we're going to be hosting in New Orleans, Louisiana, April 11th and 12th of 2019. This is a real estate conference started by agents for agents. We've got the most incredible lineup of speakers you've ever seen at a real estate educational event. It's going to be awesome. It's also going to be on the backs of the French Quarter Fest. So come make a weekend out of it. Let's collaborate, network, and take our business to the next level. Get your tickets today at MomentumUniversity.com.
This show has been paid for and powered by JWRE, Jason Will Real Estate. You can find Jason, Diana, and the whole JWRE team on the internet and Facebook. Everybody, have a great and productive and happy week.